Well, one thing I learn more and more, I think most of us know this, but grasping it is another matter. How you feel today when things are a bit rubbish. It's like when you break up with somebody, isn't it? You think that how you feel at that moment is how you're going to feel forever. And, of course, then you realise a little while down the line, well, actually, there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Things do begin to improve, and you can't always predict the positivity that's around the corner. But it's understandable lots of people feel like Richard feels at the moment, that it's all a bit bloody hopeless. And who can blame somebody when stuff is ridiculously expensive? The cost of energy is just stupid, and going out, as we mentioned earlier from Boo, having a beer is expensive. Going on holiday as well, even though apparently more people went on holiday this year than have done in previous years, it's still an arm and a leg, right? There ain't no cheapy airlines any longer. So there's a lot to kind of tuck into on this one. But things do eventually begin to improve, as I think most of us would acknowledge. 0344 499 1000. Your retail spending is increasing, though. There's a positive sign at its fastest pace for 6 months. House prices are on the rise again. That's always written as a good headline, not a good headline if you're trying to buy a house and the budget just keeps going, or the cost keeps going up, but the budget doesn't. Are we turning a corner? The pressure is on for some people. Food prices, though, are going up as well as energy, as I mentioned. Let's speak with Greg Marsh, household finance expert. Greg, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian. Nice to hear you.
Nice to have you with us. There's no sort of one picture here, is there? There's like lots of different factors. Some think, well, that's a good sign, it's looking good, but then over here, energy is going up, food prices going up, house prices are going up, but mortgage approvals are also going up. So someone's got some money somewhere.
Well, look, if you compare where we were a year ago, where it was just bad for everyone, and every headline was misery, I suppose you could say it's got a bit better, because now it's, at least some people are having a good time. If you run a pub this month, if you run a restaurant, you're a little bit happier than you were 6 months ago. The problem is a lot of the people who aren't happy, I mean, your caller you just mentioned, but look, take pensioners. There are a lot of groups in society who aren't seeing their incomes rise anything like as fast as the cost of everything has risen, who are going to face into a winter now where not only you mentioned the price of energy, energy's gone up £150 a year for the average household as of 1st of October. In addition to that, £200 comes out of your winter fuel allowance, which you would have taken for granted this time last year and previous years. So put those things together, and it's often the households who have the least money who are still feeling the pinch. To put this all in context, so yes, it's true. Right now, if we look back over the last 12 months, prices have only risen by a couple of percent. But over the last 3 years, the price of a typical basket of goods in the UK has risen by 20%. The price of food has risen by 31% over the last 3 years. It isn't coming down. No one's expecting it to come down. I mean, it took 13 years for food prices to rise by that much until the cost of living crisis happened. And so the new normal for all of us is a world in which things just will always cost more than they did, and getting used to that and accepting that, and frankly, for many people, actually being poorer as a result of that, there's no good news in that.
Do you think, one of the senses that I've got in the last few years on this very point is that some companies have used, because we expect everything to go up, because we talk about cost of living, everything's becoming more expensive. I think there are some companies that just hiked it up against that backdrop, that not for any specific reason. They've thought, well, everything else has gone up. We don't need to put our prices up, but maybe we should. We can get away with it.
It really gets me going. I mean, some of the worst offenders are mobile phone companies, where every year you sign up for a contract. Right, let's assume it wasn't even as part of a new handset deal. Let's assume you just got a SIM-only contract or a contract with one of the big carriers. And then each year, what you signed up for in the small print, which you probably weren't paying attention to, is that every year there's an increase of, inflation. And by the way, they don't take the CPI number. They take the bigger number, RPI, for no particularly good reason. And then on top of that, they add another 4%. So every year, do nothing, particularly over the last few years when prices have risen, and you're basically paying 10, 12, sometimes 15% more for exactly the same thing. And when I say the same thing, their costs are going down, because technology is improving, the cost for them to deliver the same amount of data to you to support the same set of services is decreasing over time, whereas your costs are increasing over time. So I think it's exactly right. I think many companies have been extremely cynical through the cost of living crisis. And I talk about mobile companies, I talk about broadband companies, let's be honest, some of the energy companies. And I think households, some of us have got out of the habit of shopping around for cheaper deals. And part of the reason for that is that it felt like there wasn't any point. Everything was so expensive. It was just, I'm being hit everywhere I look. It's really important not to let this stuff get away. I mean, I would say this, go use a service like Nous if you want, but even if you don't use our service, don't let this stuff build up. Do get onto it. Make sure you know what you're paying for these basic things, because we all have to pay this stuff to live, whether it's rent or mortgage costs, or whether it's the cost of energy or fuel bills. But if we don't shop around, we do get taken advantage of. Companies are, I mean, let's be honest, right? They're cynical.
Absolutely right. Do you think, what do you sense on the wider issue of, you know, the global financial scene? I mean, are you hearing any rumblings there in that respect? Because, you know, before 2008, before that crash, I mean, we could have... A lot of people wondered how it was ever possible. You know, I had a work experience kid that had about 70 grand on credit cards because he could. I mean, stuff like that. You know, the lollipop lady had a property portfolio because you could write a mortgage application on the inside of your leg and get it done. Nobody cared, giving all the money away, and then it all crashed, of course, globally. And it naturally caused a huge problem. And some say we've clearly not even got over that yet. Do you think there are any wider wobbles that we've got to watch out for?
Everyone is acutely aware that what currently is a contained conflict in the Middle East could spiral into something which is much more serious. If that were to happen, if Iran gets involved in the conflict with Israel directly or indirectly, you're talking about in the potential for significant regional conflict, sharp increases in the cost of fuel, potentially impacts on supply chains, you know, ships being caught. So I think the markets are anxious about that. I think American markets in particular, eyes on the coming election, anxious about what might happen there, anxious about, again, jobs data in America feels okay. But don't forget, if America sneezes, the world gets a cold. So you might feel like, well, it's this government's fault or it's that government's fault on this side of the Atlantic. We are price takers when it comes to what happens internationally. And so the best advice is control the things you can control. Change starts at home. Look at the things you can get on top of. Get on top of your broadband bills. Get on top of your mobile bills. Get on top of your energy. If you haven't taken a meter reading since the 1st of October, do that today. Prices have gone up. So if you get a meter reading in now, if you're not on a smart meter, at least you'll be paying as little as possible at the new higher price. It's a small... Another little one, again, just a small tip. About a third of people, particularly given the winter fuel allowances coming away now, about a third of pensioners are not claiming back the credit that they could from the government. So, you know, go to the government website and make sure that you have applied for your pension credit, because about a third of households haven't done, and that's money on the table.
There it is. Listen, Greg, great to have you on. Good advice as well. Thank you, Greg Marsh, household finance expert with us on the programme. Thank you to him. Stuff does go up, and you wonder, have the companies that make the stuff really incurred massive increased costs? Yes, and we're not talking about something that's gone up 1p. You know, they put a quid on a packet of pasta, Bisto. Do you reckon... You know Bisto, right? Bisto, it's just like in one of those pots. I know some people hate Bisto. They like to make their own gravy. I'm really not fussy about that caper. I probably couldn't tell the difference. Bisto, I reckon that when it arrives at the... You know, there's a big pallet, and it arrives in the supermarket, and there's like 1,000 Bistos on there. I reckon all of that costs Mr. Bisto about 50p to make. It's that cheap, that stuff. It's a bunch of granules with a bit of beef flavouring, but you get a veggie one and a chicken one as well. I don't think that costs anything, but I bet you if you looked, it's probably gone up ridiculously in the last couple of years. Bisto, really? The requirements for the Bisto gone that bad on you? Pasta's another one. Do you remember pasta used to be about 10p for but you could get a wheelie bin worth of pasta for about 25p. It was crazy. That's gone through the roof. Pat, how do you make pasta with some eggs and stuff? I mean, that's not tricky to make pasta. Why has that gone through the roof? Fish fingers. I mean, fish don't even have fingers, right? So there's a con for a start. What are they con? They've gone up. Captain Birdseye, lives in Barbados. That's all you need to know. So I think a lot of these companies have just thrown on the pence and the pounds, just joining in with the increase game, even if they don't need to. Where is the pinch for you? Everything's expensive. If you've got kids and you take them out, I mean, how many of you do this now? If you're going somewhere, I mentioned taking the kids trampolining. You know, the advice there is take your own drinks. Just take 2, water bottles of drink for the kids, because otherwise you end up you go to the counter, they'll, can I have a Fanta orange, but can I have whatever, can I have a slushy? Slushy? Who made that muck? Who invented that? I don't know whether to punch them or shake their hand for their genius. It's coloured ice, just crunched up. It's only £5, but you get to keep the little plastic piece of crap that it comes in, and then you take it back next time. Yeah, because we all remember to take that back next time. No, we just buy another. £5 for a glass of ice. Is somebody having a giraffe? What's happening here? So when you go to those places with your kids, you take your own food, take your own stuff, but then you forget, and you have an improv, and you realise if you start buying a bit of, just a, bar of chocolate and a drink, for the 2 of them is a £5, right? Probably a bit more than that. And then you might go, oh, can we have a pizza? Wow. It's ridiculous just to take your kids out for the weekend. If you added it up and sat down, don't do it before you go to bed because you won't sleep straight, I promise you. You just cry your eyes out and go, I've spent that much on slush. I've spent that much on coloured ice and fizzy water that's given a flavouring and some chocolate. And don't even get me on Pokemon cards, all right? I mean, that at the moment's about to bankrupt me.